Good afternoon. Thanks so much for joining. My name is Sudith Devon, and I am the head of AWS Cloud Economics team for the Asia Pacific and Japan region. As Ian mentioned, today's talk is about the topic of building a FinOps practice to realize the true value of cloud. And it's going to really focus on building out this important practice in your organization and how you can get started today. FinOps, cloud financial management, cloud financial operations, pretty interchangeable terms. And it's really about a set of practices that are established by organizations to manage, optimize, and better predict their cloud spend. And by doing that, they're able to maximize the value that they receive from their cloud investment. FinOps is a continuous and iterative journey, and it's something that will continue to evolve as your cloud spend and cloud adoption evolves. The AWS Cloud Economics team, and to sort of illustrate that, I've laid out sort of a typical journey that cloud customers take as they adopt AWS. We start from the assess phase, where cloud customers start to understand their readiness for migration and understand what are the business outcomes they really want to get from moving to the cloud. We then move into the mobilize phase, where the planning starts to happen and people start to take the inputs from the assess phase and really start to plan out their migration. We move into the migrate and modernize stage, where workloads are designed, migrated, and tested on the cloud. And once workloads start to land on the cloud, you're in that operate phase, and these two phases are closely linked. So the Cloud Economics team can help you in two specific areas. So firstly, we have a business value team, and they work very closely with customers to help them understand the commercial benefits and the value of moving to AWS, and providing that holistic picture. We also have the Cloud Financial Management team, which helps customers understand how to manage and optimize their spend and maximize that value that they're going to get out of cloud. So today's talk, as you probably could imagine, is going to focus more on that the second responsibility, the Cloud Financial Management team, and we're going to cover three things. The first thing we're going to cover is an overview of some of the differences between technology consumption in the traditional type of model and technology consumption in the cloud type of model. The second thing we're going to talk about is what are the key components of a cloud financial management practice, and what are some of the best practices we can expect in those kind of practices, and then some of the outcomes that our customers look to drive from cloud financial management. And then the final piece is really giving you a bit of a playbook on how to get started. So we'll go through some of the differences, the framework, and then the playbook. So just to set the scene, there are a number of reasons why customers adopt the cloud. It could be for data center consolidation. It could be to move into another region. It could be for carbon footprint reduction reasons. But one of the key reasons that we hear a lot of customers talk about is agility. Agility in the way you innovate, agility in the way you experiment, agility in the way you access different technology resources. So cloud gives you that opportunity to benefit tremendously from agility due to the availability and the speed at which you can access technology resources. On the other side, there's control. And how do you give developer teams the ability and the space to innovate and innovate at pace, but still within the guardrails and the guidelines of the organization outcomes? Too much control and agility can be impeded significantly. Not enough control and the consumption nature of cloud can really impact organizational abilities. So setting up a strong FinOps or cloud financial management practice is key to getting this balance right between agility and control. So taking this a little further with another example, I'll walk you through a couple of theoretical scenarios. Firstly, let's imagine you're a developer who works at a traditional company with traditional technology consumption. Your team is the technology requester. They forecast the resources they need, maybe for a period of time, and make that request to the finance team. Various finance and procurement teams act as approvers. And typically they will look at your request with dozens of requests across the organization in some sort of capital budgeting process. Once all approvals are made, The equipment is then purchased, it is delivered via the supply chain, and it is installed by the operations teams before being handed back to your team to use. The process is quite linear, and in a lot of organizations, it can be quite rigid. It's done cyclically, maybe on a budget cycle or a financial year, and in a lot of cases, the purchase can create a lot of technology debt due to the long-term capital nature of the investment. For your team, the approvals, the procurement cycles, the operational cycles slow your team down, and the ability to innovate, the ability to experiment, and the ability to be responsive to your customers' needs. Your team becomes blocked due to the dependencies that arise from this process. So moving into a cloud world requires a number of adjustments to this type of model to take advantage of the benefits. So now let's imagine that you're leading that same team in an organization that's moved to the cloud world. And we find that this linear cyclical process no longer exists. Your team is able to innovate due to the speed and availability of resources, the reduced approval times, and faster procurement and infrastructure cycle times. The technology debt that used to arise before now no longer exists, because you can terminate the resources you don't need the moment you realize you don't need them. Your team is no longer a team of just builders. They are operators and owners of their products and do a lot of activities that perhaps the finance and procurement team used to do in terms of things like cost control, procurement, and deployment. As you can imagine, this is a big transformation for organizations working in the old model. As such, we need to think about the best way to help our customers and you undergo this transformation successfully. So the next part of the presentation, we're going to start understanding all the different processes and the different components of a FinOps practice and how you can start to make moves to that end state today. So when setting up a FinOps practice, it's really easy to think it's all about cost. And cost is going to be a key component. It absolutely is, and it is a big focus of FinOps. But as you can imagine, the cloud financial management needs of your organization, even in a traditional world, are going to extend far broader than just cost and cost management. So the consumption-driven nature of cloud means that in implementing FinOps, we need to take a much more holistic approach to how we think about what we're going to do and how we look at the processes that we do today and adopt it into the cloud world. So let me give you a couple of examples. So firstly, from a forecasting perspective, your process needs to be redesigned to ensure that we're now working across the organization to better understand the drivers of cost and usage. Whether that's a product launch, a marketing campaign, regional expansion, forecasting IT spend is now inherently connected to the use and intentions of the business rather than just simply always being on a budget cycle. Secondly, we need to establish the right guardrails so that we're not surprised by the bill, or we're not waiting till the end of the month to understand what the variance is. Third, we need to ensure that tracing costs are able to be traced back to the individual teams that are incurring that spend and doing that in a very consistent manner across the organization. And finally, it's about ensuring we've got the right oversight to enable the decentralization of cost management across the organization. So you're starting to move from a function that was perhaps overly dependent on a centralized organization to do cost control to one that's now quite decentralized across the organization. So what does a good financial operations practice look like, or a good FinOps practice look like? Like, what do you get from actually deploying this in the organization? So some of the key outcomes that our customers achieve from implementing FinOps are as follows. So one, they're able to reduce unit costs as they scale. We're going to cover this a bit further on, but essentially, as the usage of cloud grows, the unit costs that they achieve are reduced significantly. Secondly, they're able to identify wasteful spend. We want to make sure that organizations are using the resources that they need, not necessarily the resources that they've bought. They've got increased financial predictability, so they're able to understand when they can expect surges, when they can expect changes in demand, and how that actually translates to cloud spend. And the last one is about trying to establish more of a cost-aware behavior and culture across the organization. So there's some of the key outcomes from a FinOps perspective. So mapping back from the key outcomes that I covered just now and all the differences between traditional consumption and cloud-based consumption, what does that all look like in a FinOps or cloud financial management practice? A disciplined cloud financial management practice, as I mentioned before, allows you to get that right balance between agility and control while improving that unit economics and cost effectiveness. We've put that into a 4-pillar framework that we share across our customer base. It's called the See, Save, Plan, and Run framework. Just to cover off briefly, and I'll double click into each one, C is all about measurement and accountability. Save is about using different techniques to optimize your costs and get better unit cost savings. Plan is about improving the predictability and the forecasting by understanding your spend and your business drivers. And finally, Run focuses on all the governance and operations and tooling and investment in people required to build out a great financial operations practice that can scale as your business grows. So let's look at each of these in a bit more detail, and I'll spend a bit of time explaining each one. The first pillar, as I mentioned, is C. And C focuses on getting the appropriate level of granularity with respect to cost and usage visibility, and then influencing the behaviors of teams that are consuming cloud because they're starting to get this visibility and are more aware of what's going on in the organization. So the first activity in C is around implementing the right cost allocation and tagging structure. This could be at an account level, but it can also be through user-defined tags. And the whole idea here is to create a natural relationship between AWS spend, the product, the business unit, the line of business that is actually incurring that spend. The next is around creating the right methods for reporting and monitoring. So this is really to be a lot more proactive and almost real-time, if you like, in the way you're managing and monitoring the spend. You don't want to be in a case where you're reviewing this at the end of the month when the invoice comes through every single time. Chargebacks and throwbacks are a very important part of the Save pillar. And this is really about getting those technology teams aware of their direct impact to the bottom line and to their P&L. And finally, it's about measuring and publishing efficiency and value KPIs in order to create a common language across technology and business stakeholders. So that's the C pillar and some of the key activities that you see in that pillar. Moving on to the Save pillar, and perhaps the one that gets a lot of focus, particularly in times like this, is all about how do you reduce your AWS footprint and doing that through technical and commercial types of optimizations. So on the technical side, it's all about how do you use the services that AWS makes available to you on the platform to make better architectural decisions that are more suited to the workload or the use case that you're going to be using the AWS platform for. So as an example, can I use Glacier storage for my archival storage rather than using a much more expensive storage tier? Can I take advantage of the price and performance benefits of a service like AWS Graviton? Can I use Autoscale to take advantage of the elasticity that's in the cloud and available for you in the cloud so that you're scaling up and scaling down resources as you need them? Next, it's around the commercial optimization, which is around leveraging the right pricing models that AWS has available for you. So yes, you want to use on-demand, and that's one of the benefits of cloud in that you are charged by the hour for the resources that you need. But steady-state workloads could benefit from using commitment-based options like savings plans or reserved instances, and as a result, getting discounts of up to 75% versus the on-demand price. Similarly, we have Spot as another pricing mechanism, might be useful for some other workloads, and you can also get up to about a 90% discount versus on-demand where you use that. So lots of options there from a technical and a commercial perspective. And the last part is about identifying wastage. There's a lot of over-provisioning, a lot of underutilization that can happen in your environment. And AWS provides you a number of tools to identify this and give you the opportunity to rectify this as well. The next pillar is around plan. And plan focuses on improving business and financial predictability, as well as enabling your business to use cloud and AWS as an enabler for strategic growth and digital transformation in the future. So the first activity and plan that a lot of our customers do is around looking at their budgeting and forecasting process. And in doing so, customers often dive a lot deeper into the business drivers and find a connection between the business driver and what would actually happen from a technology perspective. Second, it's around the use of proof of concepts, which is an interesting usage for the plan pillar. So what we see a lot of customers do is they move away from theoretical calculations when they're thinking about new architectures and new designs, and actually run this as a proof of concept very quickly to understand the real cost consumption. So you start making much more informed architectural and cost-aware decisions. The next is about using real costs that you've incurred to start articulating business cases and business plans going forward. And so you've now got, if you've used FinOps for a while and you've used cloud for a while, you've got a rich history now of actual usage and actual costs that you can start using for future business cases. And taking that a step further, now you've started to get a whole and broader picture of cloud, how it's used and the benefits. You can start providing that holistic view of what your organization could look like with AWS as a key strategic driver for your growth and digital transformation. The final pillar is run. And run focuses on the operational, people, and technology enablers for continuous financial management. And just to remember, FinOps is a process that's going to be iterative and something that changes and develops as your organization also changes and develops. So the first thing with run is around getting an executive stakeholder for all your FinOps activities. Very important, because FinOps is not a static thing, it's something that's going to evolve. And so that executive stakeholder is going to help you with decision making and getting that buy-in across the organization so that you're not slowed down. The next part is about getting a strong partnership with finance and technology. The collaboration here is critical to understanding and driving that common understanding of business drivers, forward-looking planning, and then mitigating those times when you're going to get those demand usages and surges. Next, it's about investing in people, governance, and tools as you scale. This helps drive a broader, cost-aware culture across the organization and shows that cost management is in fact a decentralized responsibility. And finally, customers who do this really well find a great way to celebrate those cost efficiency wins. This could be a small win like buying a reserved instance or moving things to a savings plan. It could be unsolicited cost optimization work carried out by an individual or a team. And it can also be much broader programmatic approaches to cost optimization. So customers who do this well often find that cost-aware culture and that ownership across the organization is something that takes place very effectively. So I've now given you a bit of an overview of the components of a FinOps practice in the 4-pillar framework. We've gone through, before that, some of the differences between technology consumption in the old world and the cloud world. And then we've also gone through some of the outcomes that we want to achieve when we're going into FinOps. So I now want to take you through a 6-step playbook that will help you get started with implementing FinOps in your organization today. First, it's about ownership and identifying someone or a team that will ultimately be responsible for managing all your FinOps capabilities and activities. This will expedite planning, execution, coordination, and the outcomes that you want to drive from CFM activities. This could be done in a centralized manner through like a cloud business office, or it could be in a decentralized manner with involving all the teams that are involved in AWS spend and usage. Next, it's around getting a partnership between your finance and finance and technology stakeholders, and creating a regular occurring bi-directional communication channel. We need to see the finance stakeholders lift their technology and cloud savviness. And similarly, we want to see our cloud and technology stakeholders really get a strong understanding of the budgeting and the process and their impact on the business, both of which are super important for ongoing success. Next, we need to look at that cost allocation. How do we start attributing the costs of the cloud back to the lines of business in a way that is natural and it makes sense? Moving away from theoretical allocations, you can start using those tags to really understand which business units, which products, which applications are actually generating cloud expenses. Cost visibility is about really starting the reporting and the baselining of cloud spend and unit costs, and then tracking them very strongly over time to really understand the impact of CFM and the impact of what those activities have done across all your internal stakeholders. So we have tools like AWS Cost Explorer that gives you a number of dashboards and reports, and you can make them visible across your organization. And again, just as a starting point, there are lots of ways you can achieve this. Cost optimization is the next step, and you can really get started. And what we see, a lot of customers who get started with cost optimization start with things like using the commitment-based pricing options. So there are a lot of steady state workloads in your organization, and there's a really good opportunity to move them to savings plans or reserved instances and take advantage of the benefits. The other thing that AWS can do for you in some of the tools that we have in Cost Explorer is look for opportunities to right size. And what we mean by right size is identify resources that are being underutilized and then scale them down and save money from actually scaling down. And the last part is around cost visualization and really starting to understand what are going to be those anomalies and various spikes that are going to come into your business, and start to understand those spikes and improve your predictability so that you're not shocked by some of these variances when they come through. Last but not least, we want to also identify education offerings available to improve the cloud IQ of the entire organization. This could be through a formal certification like Cloud Practitioner, but there's also a lot of informal resources available to you. And I'll cover off a couple of them. So you'll get these slides at some point in the future, so you don't need to write all the web links down, but essentially we've got a couple of things that are quite helpful that could get you started, and they're all free. So we have the Cloud Financial Management blog, has a lot of articles starting from very tactical ones about cost optimization and the techniques that you can use in cost optimizations, to much more broader articles around the topic of FinOps and what you can do with FinOps. On Skill Builder, we have a 1-hour course which is called Optimizing Your FinOps Strategy. It's a level 100 course, just gives you a bit of an intro into some of the key concepts. And then we also have a 17-hour course. It's again available online, called AWS for Cloud Financial Professionals. Starts at level 100, probably ends up at about level 300, and gives you a really good upskilling across lots of dimensions of cloud and cloud economics. So just to summarize, FinOps is about optimizing, managing, and predicting your cloud spend. Effective FinOps helps customers get that right balance between agility for their developers and control from a business outcomes perspective. Take the time before you move into FinOps to really inspect your current financial management processes, what their outcomes are trying to achieve, and how adaptable and flexible they are in a cloud world. They're not all going to work straight away, and you're going to need some level of modification to get them going in the cloud world. Like your current cloud financial management process, FinOps is far broader than cost optimization. So please, take a holistic approach to the way you want to implement FinOps, and then how you go about implementing it. And finally, FinOps or CFM is a continuous and iterative journey. You don't need to get it all right on day one. You don't need to do everything on day one. So think through the See, Save, Plan, Run pillar, use that as your North Star, and get started on the FinOps journey today. Just before we wrap up, Skill Builder as well is a great tool that's available to you. Lots of resources from FinOps to cloud economics to all sorts of other areas. And then finally, before we wrap today, Thank you again for your time. Please take the time, if you can, to complete the survey in your session, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon at Summit. Thanks so much.